Hello, everyone. I'm Adam Fishman, the Executive Director of American Friends of Likud, and we are very fortunate to have with us Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem, Fleur Hassan Nahoum. She's also in charge of foreign relations, economic development, and tourism in Jerusalem. And recently, she has, in fact, announced her candidacy for the Knesset, for the Likud list. And we look forward to hearing her briefing about what is happening in Jerusalem shortly after a U.S. presidential visit, the state of the nation currently, and then getting to the Q&A. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Fleur, for your first remarks.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you so much, Adam, for inviting me to speak. And thank you, everyone, for being here. I have to apologize because we're running, I'm running for Likud primaries. I literally do not have 2 minutes a day where I'm not running from place to place, meetings and conferences. But I actually scheduled my time back to Jerusalem to be at 9:30 so I could speak to all of you. So I hope you forgive me for the balagan, as we say here. Adam, absolutely, we had a interesting few weeks because Biden comes to visit, and it's a mixed bag, really. I say a mixed bag. I'm a positive person by nature. So let's start with the good things that came out of the visit, and then we'll talk about the problematic things. I'll talk in general about Jerusalem, and then it'd be much more fun if I'm answering your questions. So basically, Biden came to Israel. It was his first Middle East visit since he became the president. And you have to say that in contrast to Obama, who on his first Middle East visit decided to go to Egypt first, and I don't even actually think he came to Israel on that first trip. You know, you got to give the guy that. He came and stopped in Israel first. He also came with a message, a very different message than what he's been talking about in the last few years. And that is that, Biden was very anti-Saudi. 2.5 years ago, the man couldn't say one good thing about Saudi Arabia. 3 years ago, part of his campaign, he spoke about Saudi being a pariah, had to be made into a pariah state. And today, what do we have? Biden coming to Israel and then going to Saudi for many reasons, self-interested reasons, of course. America is in an energy crisis, but also because I think he's realized that if he doesn't, he's going to miss the Abraham Accords boat. And I truly believe that he came to a realization that if he doesn't come and do some rapprochement with Saudi, you're going to get the Chinese and the Russians filling up that void, which is exactly what happened with Russia in Syria when Obama decided to leave that place wide open. And today, we're suffering the consequences of that in Israel because we've got Russia in our northern border who is now hostile towards Israel because we're not defending their war with Ukraine. Okay, so Biden is coming. He's realized that he's made a mistake with Saudi, has an energy crisis, understands that he needs the Middle East to be with him on Iran, on energy, on Russia, doesn't want to leave a void. And at the same time, which is good for us, he decides to push forward the agenda of normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia, which I can tell you from my own experience with my work in the UAE and Bahrain and Morocco, that would be a serious game changer for Israel and the region if Saudi finally we had peace and normalization with Saudi. It is the biggest player in the region, and it has been traditionally the big defenders of the Palestinian cause, and slowly the MBS separating himself from his father's policy on the Palestinians and getting closer and closer to Israel. Whilst he was here in Israel, they signed this Jerusalem Declaration. I don't think there was anything particularly substantial in it, but it was a nice thing to do, and he had some nice symbolic gestures. On the downside, of course, he went to East Jerusalem unaccompanied by any Israelis. You know, and what I would have said is, don't take members of the government, but you could have taken the Jerusalem municipality, where this hospital is under our auspices in terms of municipal services. And that would have I think that would have been a very nice middle ground between not taking Israeli government, but having an Israeli presence. I think that was a missed opportunity. And let me be very clear why he went to visit the hospital, because most people don't understand and think this was a gesture. This wasn't a gesture. These hospitals are almost bankrupt. And the reason why they're almost bankrupt is because these are not hospitals that East Jerusalem residents use. They're not hospitals where Jerusalem residents who are Arabs are going to. Jerusalem Arab residents are going to the hospitals of Jerusalem, like Hadassah, Shaarei Tzedek, etc. You know, I've given birth 4 times, and every single time I've shared a room with an Arab woman from East Jerusalem. So health services in East Jerusalem are provided for by the health ministry to the residents of East Jerusalem. Augusta Victoria is a hospital which is private, and because Mahmoud Abbas provides no proper health services to the West Bankers that he's supposed to be in authority of and provide healthcare for, they all come to Augusta Victoria, which is a private hospital, which runs at a deficit and which the American government has decided to bail out. But let me make very clear why they're bailing them out. They're bailing them out because of the failing policies and the mafia-style leadership of Mahmoud Abbas. So that is why the Americans have to go and bail them out to begin with. Yes.
A quick question. This comes from our president, Jerry Platt, with respect to what you're talking about right now. By doing that, by allowing that to happen, by allowing them to go without any Israeli presence, the Israeli flags were taken off of the president's car when he went into that area. Does that not undermine the sovereignty of Israel, or the assumption of sovereignty that the U.S. should have of Israel over what we refer to constantly as our unified capital of Jerusalem?
So let me answer that this way. Look, the man wants a consulate in East Jerusalem for the Palestinians. Now that is really a problem for the sovereignty of Jerusalem, okay? The taking down the flag certainly doesn't look nice, but it's mainly symbolic. And I am a Jew with self-confidence, and I am a Jerusalemite that believes in the unity of my city. I don't need people from the outside to tell me that my city is unified. I know that. And so, yes, it bothers me on a symbolic level, but on a practical level, it means nothing.
So I want to ask another question this is coming from Jacob Navon, one of our President Club members, with respect to what you were just talking about, with respect to Saudi Arabia, assuming Egypt's treaty obligations with respect to Sana'a Fair and the Tiran Islands. Is that not de facto a recognition of Israeli sovereignty? You can't necessarily have a treaty obligation with a state you don't recognize.
Look, yes, again, nothing is ever black and white, is it? Look, the fact that we now have airspace, the access, okay? The fact that they are openly, I mean, you'd think that this was under the radar. This is not even under the radar anymore. They are openly inviting Israeli technology companies in the energy space, in the water space, in the agricultural space to come to Saudi. I know so many Israelis doing business in Saudi, walking in and out with their Israeli passports. You know, in the Middle East, in the Arab world, there's always 2 levels. There's the rhetoric and there's the reality, you know? And so in reality, Saudi's already normalizing with Israel. You know, the Arabs always get trapped in their own rhetoric. And that's what he has to get down from, what he has to get out from. And I think that the America can play a very significant role in this. And so that's why I think that overall, we can see the trip as a positive thing in that sense, that the Americans are saying, how do we push you together with Israel? And that is good. Saudi will recognize us eventually. The ambassador to the US to Israel, Tom Nides, said it today. We are moving towards peace and normalization. This is good news. So we can decide to get upset about a flag. And like I said, it irks me. But I'm looking at the big picture here. And in the big picture, this was a successful trip for Israel.
So I want to talk a little bit about what you're again, just moving off of what we're discussing right now. You mentioned that MBS is moving away from his father's approach with respect to the Palestinians. Is now the time? This is a question coming from Steve Goldberg, our advisory board member in California. Do you believe it is time for the Israeli government to finally say no to the so-called two-state solution? Why or why not?
So, look, I think that de facto the two-state solution is practically dead. And how do I know this? Even the Arabs I talk to don't want one, which poses other problems, of course. I really, you can never predict what can happen here, but there is certainly no two-state solution on the table at the moment. Even Biden said we're very far away from it, even though he kind of confirmed his commitment to this two-state solution. But I really don't think there's any danger of that anytime soon. And the Arabs will continue to say that they want a two-state solution, but it doesn't mean that they will stop their normalization and peace with Israel because there isn't one.
So a practical question then in that regard, and again, coming from Steve Goldberg in California, do you agree with the Israeli government to continuing to provide money to the Palestinian Authority because of the fear that it potentially could collapse?
Well, ultimately, look, I met this lovely man last night, Sander Gubber, who told me he was one of the people behind the Taylor Force Act. And it is absolutely unacceptable that we're giving any money to anybody that is paying people to kill us. It's ridiculous. And so there's a law in the Knesset that passed that says that we will deduct from any money that we're giving them, any money paid to terrorists. In my opinion, it's not good enough. But on the other side, the question is this: if the Palestinian Authority collapses, what comes in their place? So we could say that chaos, it might be better than what there is, but then we could end up getting Hamas, and maybe that's even better because at least we know who they are and they don't pretend to want peace. These are all very good questions. And, you know, I'm a member of the, as you know, in the Likud party, where Benjamin Netanyahu also had you know, a practical, pragmatic approach about this, because he understood that if they collapse, you know, it's better the devil you know, right? So I'm with Bibi on this. You have to be pragmatic, deal with the real situation. But I certainly would deduct any money paid for propaganda and for, pay for slay. And I will add to this one of my own pet causes, which is the Palestinian educational system, where where the whole world are giving money to the Palestinians through UNRWA for a curriculum that is teaching hatred, incitement, anti-Semitism, and glorification of martyrdom. And what I say to foreign leaders when I meet with them about this is, I'm not saying stop funding them. I'm saying make the funding conditional on the change of curriculum. And I think in the Israeli government, I would say the same. We don't have to stop funding, just make the funding conditional.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about the politics a little bit, because you are jumping from event to event as you are continuing to campaign for your primary run. Tell us a little bit about what you've been telling the groups that you've been meeting, and tell us a little bit about your jump from municipal to national politics.
So I've been in the Jerusalem municipality since 2016. 6.5 years, I've been, a very active city council member. In the last 4 years, a very active deputy mayor. And I've been fighting for a number of things. Firstly, of course, for our reputation in the world, fighting BDS, fighting anti-Semitism, and making sure that Jerusalem, our city, is not maligned, that we get the facts straight, because everything in the city ends up becoming an international incident. So I've become the voice for Jerusalem in the world, and I would want to continue being the voice of Jerusalem and Israel to the world, because I don't come from here. I think I have a particular advantage in communicating with people and explaining the facts, and not the delegitimization and the myths that people are wrapped in. So that's something that I would like to continue in the Knesset. The second thing that I'm very involved with, and this kind of got kicked off much more during COVID, is helping small businesses, helping the independent business person. In this country, unfortunately, it's dog eat dog when it comes to small businesses. There's not enough incentives, and we're seeped in bureaucracy and the socialist roots of this country. We need to deregulate, we need to open the markets, we need to get rid of monopolies. And so economic policy development and supporting of small, medium-sized businesses is also a big part of my platform and what I'm talking to people about. And the third thing, of course, is maintaining the integrity of a united Jerusalem and maintaining the integrity of Judea and Samaria, and our populations in these neighborhoods. I was a proponent of annexation just before the Abraham Accords, and to the Jordan Valley. I think that was an opportunity that we missed, and we should just do what's good for us, because if we're waiting for a rejectionist, intransigent people on the other side, we're not going to get anywhere. We have to keep moving. We have to keep moving forward, and everybody else can run after us.
So I want to take a step back a little bit from your specific run at a spot on the Likud list, and looking to the question of whether or not there will be a difference in this election than there has been in previous elections, based on the various polls, based on the dynamic from within the Likud and around the Likud, the last government. Can you please comment on why you think there's going to be, other than hopefully Fleur Hassan Nahoum will be a member of Knesset as well, but what will be the difference after this election that will be different than the previous four that wound up in a stalemate?
Well, that's a good question. And I think there's a few differences. Firstly, of course, if I'm on the list, we're likely to win, right? Of course, I'm joking. But yes, I mean, I do believe that I can bring a different type of audience to the Likud in the Anglos and the immigrants that have grown a little bit tired of the process. And that's really my pitch in the Likud as well, that I can bring voters from the other side. But apart from that, I think that the difference this time is this. People have seen the alternative, and it ain't pretty. The alternative is a hodgepodge coalition of people who do not agree on anything, and who hold the government ransom for money, like the Arab parties that took 40 billion shekels for their communities. They don't even know how to spend it. You understand? They don't know how to spend it. They took so much money. I'm not saying that we don't have to fund our Arab towns and villages. I think there's a lot to do there, but I'm not sure in whose hands that money has to be. And at the moment, it's in the hands of people who just want to get reelected and who ally themselves with the Muslim Brotherhood. And so I think that people, this time, the difference is that people have seen the alternative, a weak government. All I can tell you, Adam, I'm very involved in the Abraham Accords, and I go to the Gulf, and the Arab leaders and the Arabs that I meet, they're just waiting for Bibi to come back. They tell me, because they respect strength, and they respect a leader that respects himself or herself. And that's the bottom line. people respect you when you respect yourself, when you stand strong. Bibi's philosophy was and is peace for peace. Why should we bribe somebody with land to get peace? We are now a strong country in the region. People are flocking to do business with us and to make peace with us. And that sense of pride, that sense of, a steady hand on the wheel, this is, I think, what people have missed in the last year.
A question about the Anglos that you were talking about before. Are you making a concerted effort to reach out? And is that to that community around the country to get out the vote? Is that an underrepresented group within the Likud?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, it is underrepresented in the Likud. There's not one mother tongue English speaker except for Bibi in the Likud right now, in the list. And so, and people are more likely to vote when they identify with you as a person, where they identify with your voice and your vision. And I'm a diaspora Jew who made Aliyah. And so I think that I can bring those people back to the Likud. And I also, one more thing is that a lot of the Anglos in this country are undecided about whether they're voting for Likud or whether they're voting for a softer right, like Benny Gantz / Gidon Sar. And I believe that if they've got somebody in the Likud representing them and speaking to them in their voice and in their language, I can pull them away from the soft right and bring them back home to the Likud.
And are you receiving encouragement from those in the Likud, such as Bibi Netanyahu and others?
Well, I won't comment publicly, but a lot of people are pleased. Let's hope that they vote for me.
So here's a question from one of our President Club members in Florida. And the question is this: should Netanyahu provide Ayelet Shaked with a safe seat on the Likud list, or take a chance that Yamina won't cross the threshold and waste 2 to 3 right-wing seats?
Well, that's a great question for Bibi Netanyahu. And of course, he has his own baggage with Ayelet Shaked. I think she gets the full seat she needs to, and she'll join the Shaked. Has been such a huge disappointment.
One more second. I'm sorry. Could you repeat that last bit? You cut out for a moment there.
Sorry, I'm just saying that I don't have the baggage of the Bibi and Shaked relationship, but I can tell you that to me, Ayelet Shaked has been a huge disappointment in the last few years, because she has not only, sold the principles down the river, she's also proven to have very little political savvy. She has not made good decisions, despite advisors telling her otherwise. And now she's suffering the consequences for that.
So you are confident, I take it, that the numbers will be favorable, and we will be beyond the stalemate, and we'll be able to get beyond 61. But is that because of the alliances that are going to happen afterwards, or is that because the Likud will be able to garner many more seats in the Knesset?
Well, we're already on the polls on 36 seats, and that is before where we're still stuck in primaries. We haven't even started a general election campaign because we're doing primaries. By the way, we're the only Democratic Party on the right. The other Democratic parties are Labour and Meretz, who basically play musical chairs amongst 5 people. We're the largest and the most significant democracy mechanism in the country, and therefore that's what we're doing right now. But once we're done with that on the 10th of August, we will start a campaign. And before the campaign, we're on 35 seats. I'm hoping that after a really good campaign with really good candidates, we can approach 40, and then we have a government.
Just a quick question with respect to what the actual mechanism is for someone who is running to be an MK. How does that work? Where do you go on that? How does it work within the list? Do you submit? How do you submit your candidacy? Because I know there are certain reserve spots and things like that.
So I'm running. Can you hear me? So I'm running on an affirmative action reserve spot for women who have not served in the Knesset. So There used to be 3 spots. They whittled it down to 1. So it's a safe. I'm running. And yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Sorry, we just had a bad cell. You must have just hit a bad cell there. You said you were running on a reserve spot for women who have not yet been in the Knesset. There were 3
Yeah.
spots. Could you say that again?
Sorry, yes. The number 25 spot has been reserved for women who have not served in any Knesset. And that's what I'm going to be going for.
Well, we want to wish you the best of luck. We look forward to speaking to you again, hopefully after the primaries, when we can count you among those first 25 at least, and hopefully many, many more. We look forward to a successful run. We wish you b'hatzlacha, and thank you very much for joining us tonight in between your events.
And thank you to all of you supporters of the Likud in America. Thank you very much.
Good night.